Hi folks, it's Professor Michael Tafel. I'm here in Florence, and one of my favorite things to do when I come here is to actually take a little time to read some of the old Florentine authors. As you probably already know, one of my favorites is Guicciardini. Now, Guicciardini was contemporary with Machiavelli. He lived in the late 1400s into the 1500s, and he saw a lot of different things going on during the course of his life. He saw the end of the Florentine Republic. He would have seen the Savonarola regime. He also saw the rise of the Medici dukes. He was also involved in international politics and worked as an ambassador in Spain. And in his spare time, which at times he had plenty of, he used to like to sit back and write down his maxims and reflections. Now, what I want to do in these little videos is to just read some to you and also try to get a glimpse at some of the moral and psychological insight that they contain and to see if any are still relevant to us today. So, we're going to start with a few of the political ones here, folks. Series C, number 38. Although the House of the Medici is powerful and has produced 2 popes, it is much harder for it to keep control of the Florentine state than it was for Cosimo, a private citizen. He's referring to the original Cosimo, who was the banker when it still had kind of some semblance of a republic. Aside from his extraordinary ability, Cosimo was aided by the conditions of his times. With the help of only a few men, he was able to take and keep control of the government without displeasing the many, who did not yet know freedom. Indeed, in his day, the middle and lower classes were able to better their conditions every time the strong quarreled and every time a revolution took place. Now that the people have had a taste of the Grand Council, however, it is no longer a matter of seizing or usurping power from the hands of 4, 6, 10, or 20 citizens, but from the entire people. And they are so attached to their liberty that there is no chance of having them forget it. Not with all the kindness, with all the good government, or with all the recognition and exaltation of the people that the Medici or any other powers may attempt. That's an interesting one, because obviously the Medici dukes eventually come in. They rule Florence for 200 years. The people seem to be pretty much pacified or placated. Maybe it was the siege of Florence in the 1530s, the 7-month siege that really kind of squeezed that idea of liberty out of them. I'm not sure, but that was an interesting one. Number 41. If men were wise and good, those in authority should certainly be gentle rather than severe with them. But since the majority of men are either not very good or not very wise, one must rely more on severity than on kindness. Whoever thinks otherwise is mistaken. Surely anyone who can skillfully mix and blend the one with the other would produce the sweetest possible accord and harmony. But heaven endows few with such talents, perhaps no one. So that one rings a little bit of Machiavelli there, you know, cynical, maybe very realistic. I agree with many precepts here, but nevertheless an interesting one to ponder upon, because that's still a question that we're having even in the 21st century. Oh, this is one of my favorites, folks, number 51. In Florence, anyone who tries to overthrow the regime is very unwise, unless he do it out of necessity, or because he hopes to be the head of a new government. For if the attempt should fail, he has endangered himself and all of his possessions. And if it succeeds, he will gain only a fraction of what he had envisioned. What folly it is to play a game in which you can lose incomparably more than you can win. And what matters perhaps even more, once you have brought about your revolution, you will face constant torment and the fear of a new revolution. That one really resonates, folks. Like I said, Guicciardini has seen a lot of different regime changes. And here he is very cynical about those trying to overthrow current systems, because lots of times what comes afterwards is even more disastrous. Number 66. Don't believe those who fervently preach liberty. Nearly all of them, probably every single one of them, has his own particular interests in mind. Experience proves beyond a doubt that if they thought they were better off under an absolute government, they would rush into it as fast as they could. So once again, one highlighting the cynicism of people's political actions. 75. Pope Leo used to cite his father, Lorenzo de' Medici, who often said, "Remember that those who speak ill of us do not love us." Number 59. I once said to Pope Clement, who was frightened by the slightest danger, that a good cure for this baseless fear was to remember how often he had been frightened needlessly by similar circumstances. I do not give this advice to make men stop fearing altogether, but only to get them used to not always being afraid. Number 86. If you are involved in important affairs or are seeking power, you must always hide your failures and exaggerate your successes. It is a form of swindling and very much against my nature. But since your fate more often depends upon the opinions of others rather than upon facts, it's a good idea to create the impression that things are going well. The opposite reputation will be harmful to you. Number 89. Unless my source is impeachable, I am loath to believe any news that seems probable. Since men are predisposed to believe such news, it is easy to find those who will invent it, whereas the improbable or the unexpected will not be so easily made up. Therefore, when I hear expected news from an unreliable source, I am more skeptical than when I hear unexpected news. Nowadays we talk about, the internet, misinformation and fake news. And as I've been studying the Florentine Republic, that idea of getting word out there, letting rumors spread. What do they say? A rumor spreads around the globe, 100 times faster than the truth. And that was always a power play. Sometimes when you're reading like Florentine politics and politics in other parts of the world as well, get the rumors out, get the people talking about rumors and things like that. And you can really, really cause disruptions. So here we have Guicciardini being very skeptical about getting expected news. Number 126. It would certainly be desirable to do or to carry out things perfectly. That is, to have them free of the slightest defect or disorder. But that is very difficult. And so it is a mistake to spend too much time polishing things up. For very often, opportunities will flee while you are losing time trying to make something precisely the way that you want it. Indeed, even when you think you have succeeded, you'll notice later that you were wrong. For the nature of things in this world is such that nearly everything contains some imperfection in all of its parts. You must resolve to take things as they are and to consider the good, that which in it has the least evil. Now that one's a really hard one to swallow, and I kind of grasp it there. But it can also be applied, to the political level, but it could also be applied a bit in everyday life, at least parts of it. Because I know people that have hesitated to do things, to play music, to write books, to try something out, because it won't be perfect. And sometimes it's good to just put something out there even though it's not 100% perfect. Now, when it comes to politics, that's another matter and would be a longer discussion here. Number 190. To comfort those who are not what they would like to be, the proverb says, look behind you and not before you. In other words, look at how many more people there are worse off than you. It is a very true saying and should have the effect of making men happy with their lot. And yet it is very hard to accept because nature placed our face in such a way that unless we strain ourselves, we can only look ahead. That one has a lot of insight. I know often I'm always looking at those ahead of me and, I'm not doing good enough. And, sometimes you should kind of take in consideration the joys of life. Oh, here's one, number 57. How much luckier astrologers are than any other men. By telling one truth amongst 100 lies, they acquire the confidence of men, and their falsehoods are believed. Other men, by telling one lie amongst many true statements, lose the confidence of others, and no one believes them even when they are speaking the truth. This comes about because of the curiosity of men. Desirous of knowing the future and having no other way to do it, they go running after anyone who promises to reveal it to them. Number 58. How wisely the philosopher spoke when he said, "Of future contingencies, there can be no determined truth. Go where you will, the farther you go, the more you will find that this saying is absolutely true." Well, folks, Guicciardini does it again. This book, The Ricordi, can be found pretty much anywhere. I'm sure if you look enough online, you can find most of it for free. I'm sure you can get cheap used copies of it at a used bookstore. Look on the various websites that you may use. It's a great book of maxims and reflections. A great thing to have by the bedside or something to read when you come to Florence. Thanks, folks.